You're lying next to your husband every night, but feeling like strangers. Today, I'm going to show you the pattern that creates this distance and the story of a woman who realized that this was happening to her and the shift that she made that changed everything within her marriage. Her name is Felicity, and I think by the end of this, you're going to recognize yourself in her story. The distance in your marriage is not a wall, it's a dance, and a dance can change when one person changes the steps. Let me show you what I mean. Felicity was a wife who had been married for 11 years, and she had married the love of her life. They had two kids together, and on the outside, things looked great. But on the inside, she had been running on empty for a long time. I remember her telling me that she would catch herself trying to make herself available in the hopes that he would reach out emotionally to try to connect with her, but that rarely happened. And over time, she started to feel really lonely, really unseen, and very disconnected. She couldn't pinpoint how they had got into this place where they felt like roommates and were just two people living parallel lives and co parenting and running a household, but not really having any deep, intimate connection at all. It was just this slow drift where one day she just looked up from her life and realized how far apart her and her husband had grown over the years. So she said that night after dinner, he would drift to the couch and start scrolling on his phone, and she would clean up the kitchen and do the usual dance of waiting for him to ask her to come and sit with him. And he wouldn't. So she would just go and sit with him anyways and pull out her own phone to just relax. And she would count that as time together. And she knew in her heart that this was settling for way less than what she really, really desired, which was actual emotional intimacy. She also had this habit of texting him during the day. She would send him a funny meme or a picture of the kids or just checking in and saying hi, which was really sweet. But the problem was that when she would just get a thumbs up or see that he had read it, but no response, she would feel really down and even resentful. Every single time that things like this happened, she deflated a little bit. It chipped away at her. She had become an expert at engineering proximity, always making herself available and just close enough for try to connect with her. But when it didn't happen, which was often, it would chip away at her. And so she was never actually getting her heart's desire, which was for him to want to connect with her, for her to feel desired and true emotional intimacy. Now, here's what I want you to hear about that pattern. What Felicity was doing was loving. It came from a good place in her heart, from care, from thoughtfulness, from sweetness, and from love. But she was also unwittingly and without meaning to contributing to the pattern of disconnection. Because every time that she moved anxiously towards him, he pulled away. And then she would feel hurt or rejected from that. And when she would move closer to him again and the same pattern repeated, it became this cycle of disconnection. So around and around that cycle went, neither of them knowing how it started, and both of them contributing now to this dance of disconnection. And here's the freeing, liberating part that brings huge opportunity. A dance is not a wall. A wall is fixed, it's solid, it's permanent. But a dance is a pattern between two people, and a dance can change when one person changes how they move. So you don't need to wait for him to change first. But before I tell you how Felicity changed her steps in the dance, I need to tell you what she discovered first, because it was something that she was not expecting at all. One Saturday morning, Felicity's daughter bounded up to her in the kitchen and said, "Mom, what's your favorite song?" Felicity opened her mouth and nothing came out. Not because she had forgotten the old songs that she used to listen to, but because she genuinely, at this point, didn't even know what kind of music she loved. She hadn't listened to music just for her in so long. And I don't mean background noise. I don't mean what the kids were listening to or what her husband put on in the car. She literally could not remember or think of on the spot of a single song that made her excited that she loves. So in the moment, she laughed it off and gave her daughter some answer of a song name that she could remember from 10 years ago. And then she moved on with her day. But later that night, when she was getting ready for bed, she started to really replay that moment over and over and over. And it made her cry to realize that she could not think of a single song that she loved. Now, her tears were not about the song. It was about the fact that she realized that she had spent so long making herself available and always looking over at her husband, trying to gauge and take the temperature of the health of the relationship based on how interested he seemed in her. And feeling so disconnected and sad about that she had edited herself down to almost nothing. She had been disappearing in her own life. Her joys, her passions, her sense of self, her interests, her hobbies had all slowly been set aside over the years as she focused on her house, her family, her job, and her marriage. And so the question that kept replaying in her head that evening as she showered was, who am I today? What do I love? What is my favorite song? And so I want to ask you the same question right now. What have you quietly set aside, maybe without even meaning to? What used to make you feel fully like you, whether it's your passions, hobbies, interests, the things that make you laugh? And I'm not talking about you as the mom or the wife or the sister or the colleague, but just you at your core. And what parts of you have you set aside over the years? What parts of you have you slowly let go of? And if you're thinking of something right now, pop it in the comments, just name it. Because sometimes that's the very first step to reclaiming it, is naming it. So here's what Felicity discovered as she was taking her shower in the evening and really getting in touch with how much she had lost of herself. And I want you to really hold this and sit with this today because I think it's at the core of everything that we've just talked about. The distance that you're feeling in your marriage is not only about the distance between you and your husband, it's also about the distance between you and yourself. And it might seem indirect, but the path towards reconnecting with your husband is the first step to that is reconnecting with yourself. When you close the distance between you and yourself, you can close the distance between you and your husband. Because when we are so focused on the disconnection or the distance that we're experiencing in our relationship, we are no longer focused on us because we can only hold one focus at a time. And so when we're focused on the painful distance, we're losing touch with ourselves and our identity, which can lead to little by little self abandonment. And this is actually one of the three shifts that I cover in my guide that I'll tell you about in just a minute. But first, I want to tell you about what Felicity discovered when she finally came back to herself. Because what her husband did just a few weeks later, she never saw it coming. Felicity didn't overhaul her whole life. She didn't sit her husband down to have this conversation about the relationship. She just started coming home to herself. She found this old playlist that she had made in her 20s, and she started blasting that in the kitchen and just loosening up and dancing around and playing it just for her. Songs that she used to love and had totally lost track of over the years. She signed up for pottery class on a Saturday morning that she'd been wanting to take for years. She'd been curious about it, but she kept pushing it aside because she thought there were better things she could spend her time and money on. And she put the kids' activities first, and everyone else always came first. So she hadn't done it. And she finally signed up for this class. Even though it felt a little bit selfish and self indulgent, she went ahead and did it. She reconnected with some of her friends that she had lost touch with over the years and started getting together with them for dinner once a month. And they'd laugh and laugh, the kind that makes your belly hurt. And it felt so good to just spend that time with other women, other adults, and to just talk about real life and to feel seen. And after dinner, instead of hanging around and making herself available in hopes that her husband would try to connect with her or invite her to come and sit with him, she started going out for a 20-minute walk just to be in the fresh air and enjoy nature. And she'd listen to an audiobook and just chill out. She also stopped sending her husband those afternoon texts and calling to check in, not as a tactic, not because she was trying to care less about him or anything like that, but because all of a sudden her life was so full. She had so much that she was doing, and not full in the exhausting kind of way. Her life was full of life. Her life was full of passion, of things that interested her and filled her up and made her glow. Her life was starting to feel interesting to her again. And here's what I want you to notice: none of what she did was about her husband. It was about her. It was about reclaiming herself and coming home. It was about remembering who she was before she started to feel disconnected and anxious about her relationship. And that is exactly why it worked. About 6 weeks into doing this, her husband showed up at her pottery class on a Saturday morning with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He had looked up the address without even telling her, and he was grinning kind of sheepishly at the door with holding his cups of coffee for her. And she looked up and saw him there, and a huge smile. She just smiled. She was so surprised to see him there. And he said, "Oh, I just wanted to see what you were so excited about." He was curious about her again. He was leaning in. He was interested in his wife's life again. And it wasn't this huge romantic gesture, and everything in their relationship wasn't fixed right in that morning. But it was the first time in years that she felt like he was genuinely curious about her again. And it was the first time that she felt like she was someone to be genuinely curious about. And standing there with clay on her hands and a cup of coffee that was a surprise that she hadn't even asked for, and smiling at her husband, she realized in that moment that she hadn't changed her husband, she had changed the dance between them. And this is what I want to leave you with today, because this one thing can change everything in your relationship. Your aliveness is not a reward for a good marriage, it's the foundation of one. When you wait around for your marriage to get better in order to be happy, you stay stuck. But when you come alive again in yourself, you breathe new life into your marriage. Your joy, your passions, your sense of self, they are not luxuries. They are essential. That's what makes you magnetic, not in a calculated type of way, but in the most natural, irresistible type of way. Because a woman who is genuinely alive in her life, who knows exactly what her favorite song is, who comes home from pottery class with clay on her hands and a sparkle in her eyes, who smiles when her husband shows up with a surprise coffee. She changes the energy in the room without even trying. She's not waiting to be chosen, she's too busy living. Now, I know exactly what you might be thinking right now. That's beautiful, that's inspiring, but I'm so depleted. I do not have the time or the energy to pour into myself in that way. So, what could that possibly look like for me? And that's the right question. I completely understand. And it's what I want to help you with right now. I want you to imagine something right now. Let's say 6 weeks from now. Imagine that you have reclaimed something that is just for you, whether it's a hobby that you let go of years ago, or it's a playlist that you play in the kitchen or on your drive home from work. Maybe it's a creative outlet or 20 minutes after dinner where they belong just to you to go on a walk or just relax by yourself and read a book for a while. Maybe it's getting in touch with that friend that you lost touch with. And from that one shift, you notice the energy in the room feels a little bit different. You don't feel so heavy and anxious about your relationship anymore. You're not constantly looking over at him and trying to gauge and take the temperature of the relationship based on what he's doing or not doing, because you're in your own life, enjoying it and having fun. And maybe, just maybe, your husband starts to notice and starts to lean in and starts to get curious about you again. That is not a fantasy. That is what coming home to yourself looks like. And it's available to you right now, not next week, not some other time or in some other life, but right now, today. So, the question that Felicity asked herself in the shower that evening is the question I want to leave you with right now. What have I quietly set aside that I want to revive within myself? Pick one thing that is absolutely unapologetically just for your joy and enjoyment. Start there. And if you'd like help figuring out how to restore the connection in your relationship, I created something that I think you'll love. It's called Three Simple Shifts to Reignite Connection in Your Marriage. It's a 20-minute audio that walks you through step by step exactly how to bring back the warmth and the closeness. It will help you come home to yourself, release the need to try to change him, and it shifts the energy in a way that feels natural and organic, that naturally brings the warmth and connection back. It's completely free. The link is in the description. And if something stirred in you today, then the guide is going to give you a very gentle yet powerful place to start to really start implementing and integrating the steps to regaining that connection. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next one, take wonderful care of yourself and remember that that's where reconnection begins.